Hello, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Today is May 1st, Sunday, May 1st. Let's make aspirations, set our intentions with the four immeasurables prayer. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings not be separated from the happiness that has never known suffering. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment, anger, and aversion. Let's just jump right in and meditate today. Maybe we'll do a longer session of meditation today. We'll start by using the doing the 9 purifying breaths, and then we'll take that into a chunk of meditation time. So, start with our right hand. Just first envision the 3 channels, subtle body channels, which run along the spine, parallel to the spine, adjacent to the spine, the blue in the center, white on the right, red on the left, or vice versa. White on the right is usually traditionally in man, but you decide how you want to qualify that or configure that, make that decision yourself. So we'll go with the right hand to the left nostril, and we're breathing into the right channel. Goes from the nostril back, down the back, and all 3 channels join like right below the navel. You can hold there and then switch and breathe out. We'll switch left hand, left forefinger to the right nostril, breathing into the left channel. Hold. And we'll breathe through both nostrils we'll breathe into the right and left, the red and white, but when they join, breathe into the middle channel, the blue channel, and then hold where they join below the navel, and then breathe out of the blue, in and out of the blue. On the last breath, you're going to hold, and then when you breathe out, imagine that the breath exits through the crown of the head, the crown chakra, and your consciousness and your breath merges with space. And then we'll go right into meditation. Okay, great. So that was a bit longer than usual. I was like 15 minutes, and silent 15 minutes. Usually we talk through stuff, guided stuff, but sometimes it's good, I think, since I'm assuming all of you, or almost all of you, have been doing this very regularly and you know what to do. Um, those of you who have been here for a long time, in this class at least, you know, in the recent months, we've been through a lot of different teachings, um, through Victoria's discussion about 37 practices of Bodhisattva, and we read a lot of teachings from different lamas. Um, and I think it's always important to sometimes just really you know, boil things down for yourself. Uh, for me, sometimes it's just a matter of thinking, what if, you know, this is the last moment you have here in this body, on this, in this life, you know, the last day or the last hour or whatever. Not to be dramatic or morose or, you know, maudlin or anything like that, but um, I think sometimes we can be defeatist in thinking, well, we're not at this point, and when I'm at this point in my practice, then this will be this way, or I'll think this way, I'll behave, I'll let go of this behavior, I'll let go of this mindset, I'll let go of this repetitive thought or judgment or attitude, whatever it is, you know. We can get caught up saying, I'm not ready to deal with that. I will, it'll take care of itself eventually, but you know, the past and future don't exist, right? They only exist in the present, really, and in our mind, thinking about. They exist as thoughts. They don't exist as anything real. So all we have, right, is the moment, which we say and we talk about a lot. But what do we do with that, really? So you have this practice, you have these teachings, you have these, you have this mind, and you've sought out these teachings and these practices to work with this mind. And what do we do with it? Sometimes thinking that way, you know, can really just ground us in the moment. Okay, well, literally, what if, you know, the bomb was going off, you know, above us, you know, in 3 hours? That doesn't mean we're going to do something rash, you know, I don't know. But really, where do you want your mind to be ultimately? Um, that brings us to, you know, I wanted to just ask Victoria to speak a little bit about how the practice and the teachings have, I mean, literally just changed your life, changed your mind, changed how your behaviors, change how you see the world, how you do things, in very practical terms, because we get into, you know, we talk about the teachings in a very um, true way. You know, when you were discussing the 37 practices, it was really about each point and breaking it down and getting specific. But sometimes I think it's good for other students to hear how these things start to manifest, you know, through practice and through time. Um, I think it's good for people to be able to make comparisons, not in a bad way or a competitive way, but just saying, oh, yeah, that makes sense. This is what I've been thinking too. And it's almost like a check in since we don't really meet in person. And we do answer questions and talk about things and questions that you have, but In a bit more informal way, I think sometimes can be nice. So that's really basically what I wanted to ask of you, and if you were willing to share those thoughts, if I'm making sense at all, which I don't know if I am.
So you're asking me really about my own personal practice, because practice is always very, very personal. I mean, we study, we go to teachings, we read. So that's the portion in Buddhism. We always distinguish the three modalities of the path. They all have to come together to culminate into the practice. Hearing, pondering, and meditation. Hearing is reading, listening to teachings. Pondering is analyzing. One does that for oneself. Analyzing has become a very, very huge part of my life personally. And of course, meditating, because it means really nothing, the accumulation of knowledge, no matter what kind of wealth that constitutes for us. I think what's important is uh, it's much better to progress create one tiny little change in depth and stabilize it through practice than have all this information, because information in itself is really nothing. It doesn't really change us. I feel that study is a prerequisite, no question about it, but it's like studying to be a doctor and not performing the practice of being a doctor, not doing surgeries, does not make you a doctor, and you can't really save people's lives theoretically. So the practice really happens. We have to know what we have to do in meditation, and then we have to bring that to fruition in our practice. And many things, for me personally, many things have happened, such as knowing how to use a teaching uh, and stay in a somewhat meditative state throughout the day. I'm not talking about the uh, meditations, formal meditation sessions on the cushions. In formal meditation sessions on the cushions, we tackle very, very big things. Mind looking at mind, mind looking at its empty aspect and its luminous cognizant aspect. We, in formal meditation sessions, we learn how to uh, stabilize our emotions, stabilize our practice by subduing the coarse waves of thoughts coming and going. We learn how to settle down and stay in a concentration and not constantly be prone to all these mental events coming and going. And at the same time, we also only in meditation, the mind can see its luminous nature. We can see how it's within the mind that all things arise. I mean, really, it's awareness is like a very, very big drama, especially when you're not getting swept up into the little moments, but you can see the bigger picture. And on daily basis, many things have transpired over the years. I mean, we have been doing this for some years now. I mean, we also have a teacher who is a Buddha. So to be near someone who is so realized like Garchen Rinpoche has been enormous. And that's really the biggest part of my personal meditation, is always thinking on him, who he is, uh, where his mind is, where his views are, how he looks upon us. It's allowed me to become much more patient, I feel. Uh, I don't chase after the big picture, so it allows me to be content with smaller little steps in stabilizing practice. If I can help one person in one day, or I can stabilize my own practice and, let's say, do Tonglen for an hour in my formal sitting meditation, I am very content with those kinds of things. And then on the spot, when I meet people and I have difficult situations, I feel that before I jump and explode, which sometimes still happens, but certainly not as frequently as it used to, when I had no idea that there is this conceptual mind being caught up in all these kinds of things of the ego and the conceptual things of the world. but that there is this other part of consciousness where we can be aware through the day, through all the things. And especially we need that awareness through difficult situations, when we're dealing with others, also when we're dealing with ourselves while we're going through difficulties. So for me personally, meditation has really, really changed my life, changed who I am, and completely changed the way I feel that I interact with others. I cannot say that I'm still, not aware that I have anger or I'm competitive or that I have jealousies or aspire to certain things, but they're certainly much less inflamed. They don't rise up and consume everything like gigantic fires and explosions. When they arise now, if I feel these kinds of emotions arise, and they arise very spontaneously because they're habitually perpetuated inside ourselves. When we don't dismantle and disassemble them, if we don't work with them, they arise spontaneously. There's nothing that can stop that force. The only thing that can stop that force of that continuous being engulfed in this kind of a samsaric way of existing, living, and being out there, interacting with others out there, is only awareness. Only awareness that can be bigger than everything that happens inside it can stop and change these kinds of behaviors. And certainly, little by little, all the difficult emotions that we're struggling with right now can become very modified. So, I mean, for myself personally, I can say that there have been tremendous transformations, and on many levels, in terms of subduing difficult and addicting emotions, destructive emotions, negative emotions. I feel the change has been, it's very visible if I look at myself 10 years ago and I see myself now. And formal meditation, of course, also has changed enormously. I cannot say that every day I have a great session, but there are sometimes sessions where you take your analytical portion of the meditation and the questions become answered right within the session, spontaneously, without really without analysis. You're bringing the question into your session. You're resting your awareness. You're letting go of that question. You're not solidifying it. You're not chasing after it. You're not thinking, I'm going to get this or this result. You let go. And very frequently, I would say that answers arise on their own. Answers are not, on the deepest sense, answers, the most meaningful kinds of answers that we need for our life. I feel like they arise when we have the spaciousness and the luminosity, and the mind can see, mind can connect, and mind can see beyond just the small personal life.
Do you ever, what I was talking about thinking if this is your last day alive in this body, does that ever come into, do you ever think about that
I think
in
about it all
practice?
the time.
No.
I
You
feel
find that valuable?
most valuable, because to have to leave this life in a state of panic and insanity would be really just such a waste of precious human existence. Not to find that space where awareness can be grounded, because if we are going to leave our body and our mind is going to be very displaced, and really awareness is going to be diminished, like shutting the light off in the room and just being afraid in a small dark space, it would really be it would lead to very difficult results, of course, because these are the kinds of things that travel with us. Recently I was looking at a teaching, and
What was it, do you know specifically?
I forgot specifically what the teaching was. It was a couple of weeks ago, but there was a visual image that went with it. You know, how does karma go with us from one place to another? And there were 3 buckets of water, and the sun was shining on the water, and the water was evaporating. So really, what travels is that evaporated version of us. So is this really? It's not going to be Michael or Victoria or whoever, but it is us. It is our consciousness in its kind of a most pure form. But to leave this life in a way where consciousness is really shut down would not be a really great thing. And on the other hand, to be able to depart with the mind that has clarity, that can have peace, find peace within the most difficult moment, I think is extremely beneficial. I mean, there is always, in the teachings, the teachings always talk about those of the highest capacity, like our teachers, who can, who have the power to actually they have the power over the intermediate process of death, of the bardo, and they can choose where and the reason why they want to be born. For example, Garchen Rinpoche is the 9th Garchen Rinpoche. That means birth has been selected in the human realm to continue to help sentient beings over and over again. The 14th Dalai Lama, beings like that, the real bodhisattvas who come back over and over to help us, give us the teachings, maintain the Buddha Dharma, shed the light into the darkness of the world. They can control the intermediate period when the body physical portion, you know, of our being disintegrates, and when then the consciousness, the awareness travels. They can, you know, for example, the Dalai Lama already said that if the Chinese continue to control Tibet, in his next reincarnation, he will definitely not be born in Tibet. Why? Because he has the power of being reborn where and how he wants to be. Beings on that level, of that capacity, of that compassion being really the anchor to come back here to samsara, they have the power to control where and how their consciousness travels to the next rebirth.
You know how they say to be born a human, right, in Buddhist point of view, is actually not that easy, right, and is the result of positive karma from the past, right? And to have met the Dharma, or met a teacher, met the Dharma in this lifetime, also is something they call merit, right? The result of good karma that was created in the past. So you think there was this being that wasn't Michael, obviously, that had this mind stream that I'm working with now in a prior physical incarnation that did some kind of positive actions to allow now this incarnation to meet Dharma. Do you ever think about that? And do you relate to that prior incarnation as you or as something else, someone else?
I'm really not the one to talk about this, but in
I'm not saying that you remember that. I'm saying when you think about it, because that is, if this is the Buddhist point of view, then that's true, right?
I mean, needless to say, if it's your aspiration to meet with Buddha Dharma, just as in this life, because just having the body, I mean, it's all about awareness. If there's no awareness, what is out there is just a theory. We don't really know. But if we make aspirations to meet with Buddha Dharma, we make aspirations of certain nature, we certainly meet with those kinds of circumstances, just as the world around us is the expression of our mind, of our mental state. But meeting with Buddha Dharma and getting and having human rebirth is in Buddhist scriptures compared to a blind turtle in the middle of the ocean, having this little noose, and of all the places in the vast ocean, this little blind turtle swims up and find the stroke that will, bring it to the place of Dharma. That's how rare and precious human existence, which meets with the circumstance of Dharma, is.
But I mean, do you relate to ever think about that prior or a prior lifetime incarnation of your mind, that made these aspirations?
I mean, I think of the prior incarnations and surely know that we met with our teacher because it has been an aspiration from previous lifetimes. Certainly in this lifetime, the biggest chunk of my practice goes to wanting to meet the Dharma in my future life. There is no question about it. If we can think even about in terms of that, if in this life I can stop creating negative karma, hurting other beings around me, that's already a vast benefit, and that only happened through meeting with Dharma and our teacher. So definitely, from the past life and toward.
But when you look at, if you imagine or try to think about that past life, do you relate to it as you or not you?
There is no you.
I'm asking how you relate to it.
I'm saying there is no you. Awareness is not.
But how do you relate to that being? In what way? Whatever that being was.
The being is not a being that was. That being is a being that is. I feel that in awareness, there's no really such thing as time. I think it's a better question asked of someone with much greater capacity than my own. I can only say that having met the Dharma in this life, I realize that everything that is good, that is wholesome, and that makes me happy has come about as a result of meeting Dharma. And certainly for the future, I never want to be separated from Dharma in any life, if that is to happen again.
Good. Thank you very much. We're going to take some questions now. I struggle to reconcile egolessness with monetizing my services in order to make a living. It is difficult as I have to sell myself. I imagine in your line of work it's also challenging. Wondering if you have any guidance. I find the word monetizing kind of alienating because I hear that a lot. I've only started hearing in the last couple of years, and it's always spoken with derision. I find it's kind of in some form replaced the word making a living or something like that, which is a very basic reality of being in this form right now, being in this body in this time, and functioning. Whether you have a family or not, you have to feed yourself, you have to clothe yourself, and that's just it's like you in some ways it's as if you have to eat to stay alive too, you know what I mean, or breathe air or something like that. In this lifetime we have to find a way to do that. And I think if we have an attitude of humility about that, and if you take the root of the word humility, and which means HUM, or is connect, it means earth, basically, humans of the earth. There's something very, just sane about that. I mean, I'm not saying it's easy. I don't know what kind of work you do. It's hard. People work very hard. People struggle to make a living. It's just, this is, I mean, it's almost saying I kind of wish I didn't have to eat food to or sleep to exist as a human. It's like that's not where we're at, and it's a necessary thing. So You know, personally, there's times someone who, you know, considers themselves an artist, there's times I've took jobs strictly for money, you know, to make a living, you know, for myself, for my family, for whatever. Um, I find that actually, when you talk about reconcile egolessness, it's kind of there's something without ego about that, accepting your, you know, position as a human being in this life and in this world um, they say necessary evil or something like that, but it's not. I don't think there's anything evil about it. I mean, it can be depending on what you do. Um, you know, I also don't consider what I do selling myself. You know, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm not. Like I said, I've done. I my favorite type of work, and when it's really the most artistic or most expressive or most, you know, um, very creative work or something that really kind of makes an artistic statement or something like that. But I've done jobs that didn't do that at all, you know, because I needed to make a living. Um, so I don't consider that monetizing it either. You know what I mean? It's like that's a word that kind of compartmentalizes it into something else, and it's like, you know,
May I add
yeah,
something?
please.
Our teacher Garchen Rinpoche also always says when we're working, when we're going to work, or when we're paying bills, or doing very mundane things, these mundane things connect us to many, many others.
Yeah.
And if we can expand from our own mind with the aversion to this and aversion to that and a judgment to this, if we can get rid of these little things. I mean, they're not little, but they should not be really the base of our awareness. If in the base of our awareness we can think, okay, I'm working, but I am doing this for many others. My work must bring benefit to many others. When I pay an electrical bill, I sustain my country. When I do this and this, I sustain and give into my and help my society. I help my family. I help my wife, my children. So if we can think instead of the I, more with aversion toward benefiting others, uh, then you don't even have to really raise that question, because it's a question of perception of how we view what we do. And of course, there's a version that is like this, the version for me and how I don't like to do something. But if it's something that's not unethical and it's something that is necessary, uh, such as, for example, Rinpoche sometimes says, well, don't forget, you know, we eat for the organisms that live in our bodies. We don't eat just for ourselves. So it's every time trying to expand our mind from the self and move it toward others. And I think that expanding that space allows us to see and answer that question in a different manner.
Yeah, that's really good what you said. Being part, you know, seeing that interconnectedness, even like a Dharma center.
Right.
You know, a Dharma center only really can exist if somehow someone donates the space or the Sangha contributes donations to pay the rent and make sure that the teachers have food and clothes and things like that. And that's coming through, you know, the
Right.
generosity of the Sangha and donations of people who, you know,
And
you know, shared their money or shared their earnings or things like that. So that kind of interdependence can benefit so many,
so
you know.
many. And also the bathrooms have to be cleaned and the floors have to be cleaned. And we cannot think that maybe the more wealthy student can contribute the money, which is tremendous, because those are the resources the more, you know, prosperous person may have, and he's willing to share that. But someone has to clean the toilet, and those things, depending from which source, how you view them, the place they come from in one's heart, are of equal importance. They really are. We cannot think that this is better than this and this is better than this and this is better than this. Everything matters, because the cohesion, gives us the thing that exists in the way that it should exist. So it's also about not being derogatory toward oneself and thinking that I'm doing some menial shitty job and it's so insignificant, and become resentful about it. No, there's always meaning that is beyond the resentfulness. Resentfulness is how the mind holds something very, very tightly and only looking at it in this kind of a mirror toward oneself way. But if we can actually expand and change the view toward others, surely what you do and any one of us do brings a benefit. And I'm sure not on a small scale. It's just a question of our mind, how we see it.
Thank you. Will you give a specific example of a situation you had before and after your journey into meditation, Buddhism, the difference? If that's too personal, no pressure. I mean, doing this class, for instance, just feeling, if people ask for something that you can give, that's so precious, like the practice of meditation or a bit of Dharma, something like that. And you're in a position, feeling that that's important. That's just one thing, and making commitment. I mean, as long as there's people here that come to this, we feel like it's I don't want to say obligation or something. It just feels like it's a natural thing to want to, if you can give this some, or just or talk about the teachers that we talk about, or our teacher, and encourage you to meet teachers and to be able um, to say those things. I might not have been so generous in the past, or I don't even want to say generous, or willing to make commitment that way, But I think you can figure out. Victoria was pretty clear on how she felt the differences are, and you'll see that for yourself. Um, and you'll see when you don't when you don't apply mindfulness or teachings, and when you act habitually and react in ways that you've become conditioned to, and you'll see it clearly. That's the other thing. It's also very painful, but it's how you learn. That's how you change, by seeing the patterns, seeing the shortcomings, seeing the habitual reactions, seeing the ego, seeing how you're threatened, your image of yourself, and when that gets threatened, how you bristle against it and react, and all those things. You have anything to add to that?
When you start to practice and you really want to dismantle these poisons, we call them afflictions, the five poisons. Actually, only four of them are emotional, and ignorance which is the root of all the afflictions, is not. That's the portion where we study and meditate we have to do it in a very consistent way, because if we're not doing it consistently, it's like exercising once a year. There will be no muscle memory. It's very, very important. But that's what you work on in meditation. You work on other things as well, but you really work on curing yourself of these kinds of things. So the progression goes from being very dark, being very small, being very stingy, being very angry, being very petty, being very jealous, not wanting to really, it was, when I look back at 5 or 10 years ago, it was all about me. And now I'm not that interested in myself. I find myself really less and less interesting. I'm much more interested in other things, in other people. I love to find these people that outshine all of us, like our teachers, and really gaze at them and understand their qualities and want to emulate them. But there has so the shift has been from small, tight, very dark, with energy all rotating around oneself, to an awareness that's shifted away from that and toward other things. I'm not going to lie and say that I still don't get triggered. And, when terrible things happen, that I don't react in a small way, but it doesn't last as long. The madness doesn't last as long. There's a quicker response time to, and going back to reflexiveness in self again, and expanding the awareness again, and finding the real way, the real answers. Because when we're angry and when we're very tight, or when we're jealous and we're very tight, or when we have tremendous addictive desires and we're very tight, we can't really see beyond, and we can't figure out what to do. But practice is something that has taught me that little by little, especially when you're not saying, oh, I can't get to enlightenment, so let me not even bother. No, I set these tiny little goals, and every day you chisel away at the bed, at the things that you want to really cure, and every day you can little bit more replace them with something that is better. And then one day you wake up and that saying, may all my mother sentient beings, and you go, wow, they are all my mother sentient beings. Even that crazy neighbor across who like drives me crazy and bangs on my walls, or some guy who screams across the street. All these beings are my mother sentient beings. The cock, I'm not even going to go into the animal realm and other realms, but it happens, and it actually happens almost invisibly, but it does happen, and that's how you can check.
I recently found a local sangha which practices by doing walking meditation by the river. How do you practice this way? Yeah, I mean, walking meditation could be tricky if you're new, and you don't have a solid practice. I think because it can wind up being just taking a walk. Because walking, on its own, if you just say, I'm going to go out and take a walk, there's something nice about that. There's something calming about that. There's something contemplative. There's something about taking things in, which is not necessarily the practice of meditation, right? So I think if you have a fundamental practice and know, know some of the techniques of meditation, and have a sense of what meditation is, then walking meditation, I think can be a good what do you call that? A good addition to your practice, or it could be something. When people ask me about meditation who've never done it and say, well, what about walking meditation? I'm a little bit reluctant to recommend that, because like I said, that can just become taking a walk. Like I know someone said, well, I meditate in the bathtub. Well, is that taking a bath or is that meditation? Because taking a bath is very calming. It's very relaxing. Your body relaxes, you're quiet. But is that meditation? I don't know. Meditation, as we've been practicing here, working with the mind, working with the thoughts and those things. There's nothing wrong with taking a walk or taking a bath. Is what I'm saying, that there's something very calming and nice about those things. But I think if you do have a strong practice of sitting meditation, then walking meditation can be another aspect or a different aspect of that. But so keep that in mind. I don't know if you.
Walking meditation in Theravadan tradition, Thich Nhat Hanh used to, there are many masters that did walking meditations. Again, as Michael said, what's very important is to have a good basis, is to really know what meditation is as opposed to ordinary activities. So if you can bring meditation into walking, and let's say you can employ certain methodology like the Tonglen, when you see animals, birds, and mentally you can look at them and say, may you be liberated, and you can send that energy to them, or just simply choose a method and continue to meditate while you're walking, such as Tonglen, 9 breath purification. There are many methods. We haven't discussed all of them here, because to do many things, one has to also take refuge and go deeper into the practice with preliminary practices and then the main practices. But as Michael said, you really need to know the difference between ordinary activity and meditation. So you want to bring awareness into ordinary activities and basically not have sitting sessions and regular activity be separated all the time. But it's very important to first stabilize practice in the setting where you know you are meditating, and then you could take it with you all the time. In fact, that's why we sit, so that we can take our meditation into life. We're not sitting so we could just space out for an hour. We're sitting so we can transform ourselves and bring our better version into life, and bring our awareness into life, and make ordinary things our meditation.
My peace is very disrupted by constant indecisiveness, and I believe this ultimately comes from having lost my sense of self and truly knowing who I am. My path and focus now is on learning who I am at the truest level. Can you recommend any specific practice or technique to help me? Well, Buddhism might be a little tricky because it's kind of about really not knowing who you are anymore, at least not knowing who you have thought yourself to be. And by that, we're talking about the self in Buddhist point of view. That's well, not even just Buddhist point of view. The self being this kind of concept and collection of years of conditioning and ideas and behaviors and interactions, and the self, as we use the word self, and it's such a conditioned, dependent concept, dependent on so many other things. I'm a son. Son means I'm relating to my parents. I'm a father. That's conditioned by my relationship to my kids. I'm an actor. That's my relationship to my job. It's like, where is the self in all that? What is the essential nature of the self that we're even talking about that's relating to these things? So Buddhism really is about really trying to see how this illusion, that we've come to exist within, how that's kept us bound, by all these concepts and by all these labels and by all these, and then they become fixed into behaviors, and they become, like you say, fixed into thoughts, indecisiveness, these thoughts that kind of, plague us or things like that. I don't know where you're at in terms of your practice. Can I recommend specific practice technique? I mean, it's pretty much what we do here, looking at the mind, working with the mind, seeing how our thoughts arise, working with them. And then, the teachings themselves that are everything, We talk about a lot of teachers like Garchen Rinpoche, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, Zonser Khyentse Rinpoche. They're on the YouTube, on the website. We talk about a lot of these teachers, Khandro Rinpoche, who give us these teachings to tell us why our peace is disrupted by indecisiveness, like you say, why our minds cause us suffering. Why do our emotions cause us to suffer? Why do our attachments cause us to suffer? And start to understand these mechanisms. So, I mean, I can't really say specific practice or technique other than just, if this path seems to be one that calls to you, just immersing yourself in it, in finding a teacher and studying and meditating and reflecting on the teachings. That's my, my path, I mean, I don't really have any other answers besides that.
So I think, well, two things. All sentient beings, it's the nature of awareness. The nature of awareness is Buddhahood. That's what we talk about all the time. It's the synonym for it is Buddhahood, the ultimate truth, enlightenment. All of these are all synonyms for the same thing. That is the nature of awareness. So all beings with awareness, all sentient beings, have that nature. Tathagata Garba. That's our ultimate nature. What Michael was describing, this conglomerate, I am a sun and I'm a this and I'm a that, is like, let's say our nature is that of the complete sun, but then we're in this little black box and we make one little perforation and a tiny little bit of sun comes in through that dark space and we call it something, we give it a name, we say Michael or Victoria, and the label is, that's the relative level with which we get kind of stuck, so of course, practice is about breaking all the walls and seeing the nature, our nature, as this totality of luminosity and limitless space, limitless awareness. But on the relative level, maybe you don't have this kind of crazy solidity which you have to fight. So perhaps it's something actually very, very good, because this is what we try to do in meditation. Two things. We try to see our ground nature. We try to see our Buddha nature, the essence of awareness. And then we also try to do, on a relative level, we try to rebuild ourselves as a better version of ourselves. So we say every day in the morning, we make an aspiration. I'm going to be patient. I'm going to be this. I'm going to be generous. I'm going to watch my mind. I'm going to counter my stinginess. I'm going to counter my anger. I'm going to not be hijacked by all this crap. And at night, if we did get hijacked, we promise ourselves, we say, okay, from this time until tomorrow, I will strive, and tomorrow I will start a day and I will watch stronger. I will be more vigilant. So about creating this better version of ourselves. That little perforation in the black box through which we look at the sun, namely our nature, it's really so relative, this mundane version of ourselves. You could really create whatever you want. So maybe it's a good way for you to decide what kind of a better person you want to be. If you're not stuck with the version of yourself that is very solidified, perhaps it's actually a very, very good, maybe it's uncomfortable, but maybe it's very good to be in that open situation, not knowing, because maybe you should just decide on what is a better version of you now. And, that's our relative level. And then in meditation, we want to look at our ultimate nature. We want to connect to our ultimate nature of our awareness, our Buddhahood. So those are the two things that have to come together. And the light, of our awareness has to really start to reshape the relative version of what we are, which is just this tiny little hole through which we see the, reality, because that's what conceptual mind is. It's like taking the cosmos and squeezing it into this tiny little thing. That's conceptual mind. So perhaps it's actually a fortuitous moment in your life, and you can really redefine who you are. And don't be so afraid, because ultimately what I am is just a version that I do. It's a version that I solidify. There's really nothing really there. Everything that we've become is something that we just have a strong attachment to, and this is how others label us, so we believe and maintain that, but it's really not that big of a deal. It's really not our fundamental nature.
Thank you. Okay, let's close by dedicating merit generated by today's class for the benefit of all beings. By this merit may all beings attain a state of enlightenment and conquer the enemies of faults and delusions. May they be liberated from this ocean of samsara and its pounding waves, birth, old age, sickness, and death. Thank you for being a little more, it was a little unorthodox today, not normally how we do things, and get kind of personal and a little bit, which is, I think, sometimes nice.
You gotta
It's
get
it's
some,
it's been helpful for me in the past. That's why I thought once in a while it's kind of good to check in that way.
but you gotta get somebody better than me to
Okay.
answer these questions.
And better than me too. We're gonna have 2 other people do this class next week who really have much more to say. Thank you, Nick Slidio, our
Thank you, Nick.
producer, for making this possible.
Thank you, Nick.
His
Thank you.
generosity, and thank you all for coming.
Please do Tonglen for all the difficult places in the world, Ukraine, South Africa, all the many, Israel, all the many difficult places. Tonglen is an incredibly profound practice, and it expands our awareness, and it's very, very effective. So we can change negative things in the world. Thank you.